Monday Night Raw starts off with Seth Rollins. He ends up cutting a promo. He basically ends up mentioning, of course, Money in the Bank. He ends up mentioning Roman Reigns, CM Punk, and how there's no one left standing in his way. And he finally officially reveals the name of this faction, which is called The Vision. Finally, we finally got a name for this faction. And I kind of like it. I like the name, The Vision, because he ends up mentioning how there's a past, the present, and the future. So I like the idea of the name. You get LA Knight, he comes out, he ends up mentioning Saturday night's main event, feels like he feels a bit insulted due to Seth Rollins faking an injury, and he wants a title match then and there on Raw. Seth Rollins, of course, being the heel, of course, refuses. Then you get Adam Pearce. He ends up coming out and ends up making the match official. Adam Pearce was just making matches official, just left and right, constantly just coming out, making matches official. So this ends up being the main event. We already know how the main event was probably, which ended up being most likely ended up happening, which was going to be a disqualification, of course, because you wasn't going to have LA Knight lose. It would just not make LA Knight look good, and plus you need to protect everyone in the match, so it only made sense for it to be a disqualification. But I did like the way it opened the show. The only thing I didn't like was how long it was. It did felt a bit long, I'm going to be honest with you. The segment was a bit too long, especially the fact that the whole purpose of that segment was just to get to the main event match, which could have been a lot shorter. I'm just going to be honest. They did stretch this promo a little bit too much for my liking, but it was a good way to start the show. Afterwards, we end up getting Sheamus versus Rusev. This is their fourth match, if I'm not mistaken, or the third. One or the other. They was putting on a decent match, but it ends up being a count out, so it ends in no contest. Then you end up getting them both just brawling on the outside, continuing to fight throughout the entire show. This kind of gave me Bronson Reed and Braun Strowman vibes, where they just constantly fight backstage. That's what they end up doing throughout the show, where they just constantly fight and fight and fight security, trying to break them up. This is what this feud needed, because this feud was getting a little boring. I'm back interested in this feud. We need more of this. We need them just trying to fight each other no matter what. Like next week on Raw, I hope they just come out guns blazing, just fighting, bro. That's how they should open the show immediately. Or when they first, showcase these two should just be fighting backstage. Them going through a table, them going through, some glass, whatever. They need to intense this feud. Have them continue to just fight, be wild, chaotic, that they just can't get their hands off each other. Like they need to continue to do this, okay? To make this feud really interesting, to really get people invested in this feud. Continue to have this feud just keep on getting more and more intense, where they just continue to just be more reckless towards each other, where they just cannot stop trying to attack each other no matter what. Just completely on site whenever they see each other. That's what they should be doing. I like what they're doing. I like they did this. They had a huge brawl where they constantly, even Sami Zayn got involved, where Rusev ended up attacking Sami Zayn. I hope we're not putting Sami Zayn in this feud. Do not do that. Like, no. Do not have Sami Zayn in this feud. Do not do that. But I like what they're doing here. I like what they did here. I like the brawl. Like them continuing to attack throughout Monday Night Raw. I hope that becomes a continuous thing. Just repeat what you did with Bronson Reed and Braun Strowman. Just do that. Repeat that formula. And I think you have a great feud. We end up getting the women's tag team champions, Charlotte and Alexa Bliss. They end up cutting a very cringe promo. I'm just gonna be honest, a very cringe promo. Then you get the Judgment Day. They come out. They want a title shot. Adam Pearce comes out and announces another title match. The match was good. It was a really good match. Charlotte and Alexa Bliss picked up the victory, continuing their story. Roxanne Perez got pinned again, so I'm assuming that's definitely going to lead to a storyline with Liv Morgan, because Liv Morgan is probably going to blame Roxanne Perez for losing those tag titles twice. Well, losing them and couldn't regain them due to her being pinned back to back. So I'm assuming that's definitely going to lead to the story. Yeah, interested to see what Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair do with these titles. Well, I'm not really excited. I'm more so excited for their friendship, not really what they do with these titles, because we all know that tag division doesn't really exist. But it should be interesting to see what they do with the tag titles in terms of their friendship, see how they continue to build that story, and then eventually the turn whenever that happens. So we'll see how this plays out. And speaking of the Judgment Day, we do end up getting a quick segment with Dominic and AJ Styles. AJ Styles ends up confronting Dominic, ends up saying that what he did at why am I already forgetting the pay-per-view that just literally SummerSlam, that what he did at SummerSlam with the boot, it was very clever, but eventually he will run out of tricks, but eventually he will run out of ideas, and him losing that Intercontinental Championship is inevitable. So they're going to continue this view. It was a segment also where Dominic had a weird match with Dragon Lee for whatever reason, and then El Grande Americanos, both of them ended up coming in, interfering. It was very weird. AJ Styles comes for the save after Dominic tries to attack Dragon Lee. So they're continuing this feud, which I do like. I like them continuing this feud. Very interested to see how this plays out. I do think Dominic will retain during this feud, even though I would love the Intercontinental Championship run with AJ Styles, because I think you could tell more of a story here. I think it could be a lot more interesting, especially if you include guys like Sheamus and Rusev into that feud. That could be very interesting. But we'll see how this plays out. But I do like what they're doing so far with Dominic. I'm just glad they're finally giving him some story, because when he first won this Intercontinental Championship, I was very excited. Cause I'm like, bro, you got one of the best heels with a main roster championship. I'm like, this can really be some good stuff. And they haven't really been booking Dominic like that. So hopefully hopefully they continue to book Dominic in a good way with this Intercontinental Championship. All right, now we get the best thing on the show, Becky Lynch. I'm going to keep saying Becky Lynch is the best thing on Raw. She was cutting a promo. She was mentioning, look, no more Lyra Valkyria. It's on to new challengers. Then Nikki Bella comes out. And I'm going to be honest, I was so frustrated and disappointed when Nikki Bella came out. But I immediately got excited the moment they start cutting a promo against each other. Nikki Bella basically ends up coming out, ends up saying that Becky Lynch is ruining the women's division, that she's handicapping it, that she's supposed to be uplifting the division, supporting the division, but while she's taking all the spotlight from it. She ends up mentioning how Becky Lynch ended up leaving, but she ended up coming back, whether it was due to jealousy and that this isn't her era anymore and all that. Then she ends up mentioning her husband. I'm just going to get straight to the main talking point. She ends up mentioning her husband. Becky Lynch ends up saying that she shouldn't be talking about her and her hot husband, and that her and her husband are the greatest wrestling couple of all time, which is I can't think of another wrestling couple that comes close, so she's probably right. Then she ends up mentioning that that could have been you with you and your husband, but then she ends up stopping, mentioning John Cena, and then she ends up saying that she ends up saying that she can't see him anymore, which I thought was hilarious. This was great. This was a great segment. Then it ends with Becky Lynch end up getting a cheap shot on Nikki Bella. This was a great segment. This was great. I was so disappointed the moment Nikki Bella's theme music hit, but bro, these two cook. These two cook. Becky Lynch completely destroyed Nikki Bella on the microphone, which was expected, but this was a great segment. I'm actually excited for this feud. I'm actually interested to see what they could do with this feud. This is actually interesting. I thought this was going to be a terrible segment, terrible promo, but these women actually shocked. Well, Becky Lynch didn't really shock. It was more so Nikki Bella actually shocked me. Now, I still don't buy her babyface gimmick. I get why she's a babyface. It makes sense why, but I'm just to be honest, her babyface gimmick is just not working for me, to be honest with you. It comes off a bit forced, but this was good. This was really good. I'm actually excited for this. I like this. This is something fresh and new for Becky Lynch. They mentioned their past, how they was never able to interact with each other in the past, because when Nikki Bella was, at her peak, Becky Lynch was, just coming into WWE. So very interested to see how this plays out. I like what they're doing here. This is going to be very interesting. Then we end up getting the main event, Seth Rollins versus LA Knight for the World Heavyweight Championship. Ends in disqualification due to CM Punk interfering in the match. He wants his payback for getting cashed in on. Then you get LA Knight, you get them two arguing. Then you get Braun Breaker and Bronze Reed. They take out CM Punk and LA Knight. They end up taking them both out. Then you get Roman Reigns. He ends up making his return. He comes out. He was getting the upper hand on both the Brawns, but there was a moment where Seth Rollins ends up taking the advantage, ends up hitting a curb stomp while Roman Reigns was distracted, and then Division stands tall. Overall, this was a good show. This was a good, fun, enjoyable show. I like what they're doing here. A lot of moving pieces, a lot of storylines developed. Very interested to see how this all plays out. You guys let me know your overall thoughts and opinions down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. But yeah, that's it.